Well, ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, when I read this article for the first time, this was probably one of the funniest articles that I've read in quite some time. And it's something to do with what we've been talking about, right? So we've been talking about Sweet Baby Inc. We've been talking about wokeness in gaming. We've been talking about all this stuff happening in the gaming industry right now in mainstream and the fight that's happening with Gamergate 2.0, all of that stuff. And Microsoft, not only did Microsoft join into the fray before talking about everyone belongs in gaming and all this DEI nonsense and doubling down on that, well, now apparently they're cautioning developers to avoid making curvy female characters.
Gay!
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Microsoft is trying to tell you that attractive female characters should not be a thing in gaming. They are trying to tell developers to avoid making curvy, attractive female characters, which is something that a lot of people enjoy, male and female, and many gamers have talked against all this forced DEI nonsense we're seeing in gaming right now, and yet they continue to double down and triple down. Now, for me, in my opinion, this has nothing to do with women, ladies and gentlemen. This has nothing to do with making ugly women feel seen. This entire thing has to do with making trans people feel seen, in my opinion. So let's get into this article, guys, from Niche Gamer. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into that YouTube algorithm. It says Microsoft urges developers not to create female characters with exaggerated body proportions on their official site to support game devs. The site, titled Product Inclusion Action, helps customers feel seen, includes a bullet list of considerations that they urge developers to make when working on their product. One Twitter user pointed out the language expressed condemning certain female characters as reinforcing negative gender stereotypes. Now, again, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why I feel the way that I feel is because of two particular notions in this paragraph right here from Microsoft. First, you have the fact that they're trying to make customers feel seen. Okay, maybe you can argue it has to be with ugly women feeling seen. I really don't know. But then the negative part right here, negative gender stereotypes, this 100% has to do with trans women, ladies and gentlemen. They are making women purposefully ugly in video games, in Western video games. They're doing this because they want trans women to feel seen. They don't want to, for some reason. I didn't know they were offended by beautiful women, but apparently trans women cannot handle seeing beautiful, real women on the screen, even though they're not even real at the end of the day. They're pixels, they're graphics, but still, we all know they're trying to model after real women when they do characters like Eve, for example, from Stellar Blade, because it was actually based off of a real model using all of her real proportions. And yeah, they exaggerated the jiggle a little bit, but it's a Korean game. What do you expect? They still have some taste, unlike Western developers. Then we have a bullet point here, and this is where it gets really ridiculous, okay? So they try to say, are you reinforcing any negative gender stereotypes? Now, keep in mind, this is the bullet point that they sent out to developers. So when developers are creating games for the Microsoft platform, they want these developers to look at these bullet points and basically check off boxes. They want to make sure that you're not doing X, Y, Z on these bullet points, and if you are, you need to change it. So the first bullet point says, are you unnecessarily introducing gender and gender barriers into your code or design? Okay, gender barriers into your code or design. I mean, this is why I keep saying, and also shout out to all the people who are watching me who can't stand me. I've seen your videos. They're absolutely hilarious, and please continue to make more of them, even though I make zero about you because you are completely not worth my time. But I'm glad that you admit that I'm worth your time. When you talk about gender barriers and gender design in your code or whatever, this is why developers cannot be creative, because the moment you start to get creative, you have to second guess yourself and look at a whole bunch of checkboxes and make sure that you're checking off the right ones and not checking off the wrong ones. They need you to limit your creativity and think about XYZ outside stereotypes that have nothing to do with the game that you're making. This is why you'll never be able to make a game with your own creative vision if you work in the mainstream industry, because you have to bow down to your overlords that are getting funding from DEI. You want to deny this all you want. They're always going to come out and deny this, but we know for a fact that companies like BlackRock are actively involved in a lot lot of AAA studios. We know that they even invested in Sega, for example, which is why Sega went from Sega to Sega very quickly, because they got their funding. They bought I think it was almost 100,000 shares in Sega BlackRock bought, and people want to pretend like that's not happening. None of that's happening. It's just a conspiracy theory. Yeah, sure. Keep thinking about that. Then it says, are you creating playable female characters that are equal in skill and ability to their male peers? Now, my problem with this one is that, number two, it goes on both ends, okay? Number one, it's a game, obviously. It's fake. A female can absolutely have the same skill and ability and set as the male counterpart, as long as you explain it properly, as long as there's a reason for which these characters have their powers to begin with. You know why a lot of people don't question the males with superpowers? It's because the males with superpowers usually get written very well, to the point where they're explained as to why and how they have the abilities that they do. Nobody's ever complained about a female character that happens to be super strong, as long as you explain it properly. Look at Wonder Woman, for example. Nobody will ever complain about that. But when you start making female characters that are just absolutely decimating 400-500-pound dudes, and 10 of them at the same time, and when asked about her powers, you're just like, yeah, she's a woman. Stunning and brave. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. You need to actually put some effort into your writing and explain the characters a little bit, so people don't question so much, because there are some things, even in fantasy worlds, when you look at it, you're like, that kind of doesn't make any sense. I'm gonna need a little explanation there. It says, are your female characters equipped with clothing and armor that fits their task? Do they have exaggerated body proportions? Now, when these people say exaggerated body proportions, they want to pretend as if real females do not have hips, boobs, butts, all that stuff that are very well known to be with actual real females. When they say exaggerated body proportions, they want to claim that Eve is exaggerated, even though she's based off of a real model, and what's exaggerated is maybe the physics around her butt and whatnot. But still, the real model was based off of a real person, and that's not exaggerated at all. They want to say exaggerated body proportions because the people who are running this DEI nonsense know for a fact that 95+% of trans women do not put in the effort, do not put in the time, do not invest the money, do not do anything that is required to make them actually even somewhat pass as a real female. You can see a trans woman from a mile away 95% plus of the time. With the other 5%, you might have to look twice, with the 1% being, you might get fooled. You know what I'm saying? That little 1% that is very, very, very small, and it's already a small community as it is. But let's be real, 95% you can see from a mile away, you know for a fact that ain't a female, and that's who they're trying to cater to. When they say, do you have exaggerated body proportions, they're saying that because they want to remove real female bodies in order to make up for the fact that these trans women can never attain those real female bodies unless they do everything I said earlier. And even then, there's still one tall tale sign that's going to prove that you're not a female, but we're not even going to go there. Then it says, when the story allows, do you show male characters who display a full range of emotions, including joy, sadness, and vulnerability? Now, they're not just coming after women, even though women are basically the main target, probably for 90+% of the nonsense that's happening. But there is a 5 to 10% there that has to do with feminizing men. They want to feminize men as much as possible for obvious reasons, ladies and gentlemen. So when they say, oh, do you show a man who's capable of displaying a full range of emotions, joy, sadness, and vulnerability? They want that because they know that a lot of gay males are very, very emotional for the most part. They know that a lot of men like to hide their feelings, like to keep it on the inside, because society has taught men to do that, and they're trying to change that in order to make gay men feel more represented, or even trans men feel more represented. It's more so about trans men than gay men, because trans men are women, and biologically they're going to be more emotional than your standard male, so they want to make sure they feel seen. So ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, all of it has to do with trans people. It says, recently, Western game developers have been making a point to rally against objectification in games and are citing unrealistic beauty standards set by fictional characters. Most recently, Stellar Blade has been the subject of such criticism, despite the game's heroine being based off of a real-life model. So, again, guys, we already spoke about that. We already know that Eve is based off of a real person. She's been shown many, many times, and it completely destroys their narrative about how everything's exaggerated. This is not a real woman. Real women don't look like this. Well, guess what? You may not look like this because you don't want to put into work, but they look like this because they put in the work. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy it. And if you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know your thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.